do that again.
You like
There we go.
hyperventilate.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I would like to call the meeting to
Not
order.
healthy.
Pretty good,
Will
yeah.
Able and willing, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We have not had anyone request an opportunity to comment on an item not on the agenda, so we will move into the report of the secretary. I'd like a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the October 7 meeting.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, October 7th, 2020.
Second.
I'm going to write down Matt, sorry. Any corrections,
I have
questions?
a couple of things. I don't know if they're corrections or just questions about wording. On page 2, about the middle of that big paragraph, a survey was created and sent out to the district for how many students would feel more comfortable keeping their student home until a vaccine was found.
Yeah, I think that's parents.
I think that's parents. And then the survey had 17% responses to this question. Does that mean only 17% of people answered it? or-
17% responded that they would like to keep their children home until there was a vaccine.
Right,
We
so
should
that-
change the wording of that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 7% responded yes.
Yes,
Oh, there we go.
And,
Yeah.
because our response rate to that survey was like 90%. It was-
yeah, that's what I
yeah,
thought.
yeah,
That's why I was
exactly.
questioning. I was like, I'm not sure what
Thank
we're
you.
really saying here. I mean, it kind of clarifies it later when you said he stated the original survey results
Yep.
did not hold true, but just to clarify that.
Yeah,
And I think
perfect.
it's maybe the plan had been approved and asked people to make a commitment from now till January.
Anybody notice anything else? Go ahead.
Just a little bit higher in that paragraph, number 2, the 5th line down, that sentence says, what that means is that we should have had the board for a vote too, so these classrooms could remain. I think that's supposed to be, had the board vote,
Yes.
so,
Right,
so the 4 and A and 2, I
Yep.
think get removed.
yeah,
Yes, I like that.
yeah. The only other thing I saw is really small. It's on page 4, and it's in 1, 2, 3. It's towards the second half of the page. The coaches are building relationships with the athletes and providing and experience. And I think it's just to take out the D, providing an.
Yep. Yes.
Another small one on page 3, the first full paragraph, second line. Class sizes as, it should be they, it just says the are.
As they are, that's right, yes. Any other comments, corrections? No? In that case, all in favor? And that is 6-0. Thank you. Which brings us to the report of the chair. That's me. So we did have a town officials meeting on October 14th. I took a bunch of notes. I think I might have been the only board member there.
Yeah, I had, my mom had surgery.
Yeah,
I
okay.
couldn't come in, but I couldn't.
So I think Perry, no, it wouldn't have been Perry, but the first discussion point was around how the voting's going to be handled at the middle school on November 3rd in terms of metering voters so that there's only a certain number of people in the building. And we talked about the plan for cleaning thoroughly after the vote. One interesting that emerged from that was that apparently, and I don't know whether this is state law, but mask wearing cannot be mandated at a polling place. So
It cannot
it
be?
cannot be mandated.
That's
So
interesting.
if people want to vote with no masks, they can.
Even if it's at a school?
Interesting.
That's the understanding.
Yeah.
But it's interesting
Whoa.
because the
People need to
governor
know that.
also did a executive order on the 6th, Ryan, is that right? 13th? 6th, but it took effect the 13th, which said basically all visitors to Teamer School need to wear masks. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But that was the understanding, the advice given by Maine School Management to us.
Huh.
Which, very interesting. We discussed sports, both town sports and school sports, as we were, at that point, just coming back to green status from yellow. We discussed, everybody's concerned about state revenues in the coming months and expecting curtailment, and we'll all be dealing with that, municipalities and districts. Perry talked about his replacement. The search is going to start for a new town manager in South Berwick in around the beginning of December. He's planning to stick with the job through the budget season, so he's going to be around until next spring. And he's targeting an April or May hire. He did go out of his way to throw kudos at our bus drivers. He said that in addition to just, them being important frontline workers, that they're doing a really great job of working their way around traffic and actually helping the traffic situation, at least in South Berwick. In Elliott, there's a bunch of work being done on Old County Road. It's being widened, and the school bus turnaround is being widened, I guess. There's paving and striping going on. 236 near the high school, the top coat for the entrance within 2 weeks of that meeting is probably coming right up, so that road across the street should be top coated shortly. Perry's recommending that we hold off on the traffic study until we're past the pandemic, so that we can get a real traffic study instead of a pandemic traffic study. And that's just with regard to the traffic light out front. Dana talked about bond, $18.6 million bond that would extend the public water and sewer up 236. They're sizing the pipes so that they can ultimately add the middle school as well as potentially do a future connection to South Berwick. Beach Road Elliott safety study, center turn lanes with widening is what's being proposed. And they're going to realign a couple of intersections, Depot Road and 236, and then Goodwin, Dover, and roads in 236. Those are all the notes I took. Did you get anything else beyond that?
No, I mean, it was, we spent a lot of time talking about the elections. Just for clarity for us, that we will, our building will be closed that day, and so we are letting staff work remotely that day. Just
This
because
building.
I know for the middle school where they are voting. And so we are going to not have the staff in the building that day. If they need to have accommodations in another building, we'll offer that. But I think just from a safety perspective and just a traffic perspective, that's going to be a very busy place. And so it would be best just to be able to close off that building and really focus on the election that day, which is kind of what our original concern was. So, but just to provide some clarity. And then we will do the cleaning afterwards. We have Wednesday's remote learning day. And so our staff will have, the 24-hour period to be able to clean that gym thoroughly before kids go back in. So.
Thank you. Second thing on my report, the MSMA Fall Conference, October 30th and 31st, is now open for registration. And if any of you are interested, I hope you'll contact Elaine. She'll get you registered. I've left a copy that Elaine provided, thank you very much, on each of your desks, including our student reps of the agenda for that meeting. So something I strongly encourage you all to consider.
So I have a question about that. So I'm definitely interested, but I'm potentially not at all available on the 30th.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, are they recording it?
They are. I
Okay.
believe the
thought-
plan is to make each of the sessions available to watch recordings for something like a week after the
A
conference.
week,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
my
That's
understanding.
really great, because then
Yeah.
you can kind of space it out and not
Yeah.
have 2 whole
Yes.
days lost. Yeah, that's awesome.
I was feeling the same way, Lisa, just because I can't
I can't.
guarantee what my day's gonna look like tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because it could change drastically, and so to be able to have that ability to watch it over time is really important for me, and
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I was just actually
That
more like
might make
2
the difference
weeks,
for
but-
me. I know I'm not available the 31st at all. so-
Right.
So do we still need to register in order to get the link to?
Yes,
Be able to watch
yeah, we
it.
still would want to go through that process and just
Yeah.
register, and then we, and we can get some clarity on that tomorrow, just to make sure, so I'll have Elaine look into that.
Okay.
Yep.
One thought that I had, and I don't know if we really need to do this, if it really matters, but I think I put this in an email, maybe deciding who's doing which one, so that not everybody has to do the same one and then we miss two others that
Yep.
really we should have learned about. So I thought if we could divide and conquer and
Sure.
then download with each other the basics.
Sure.
Of
Like a
what
group
we-
read, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Everyone reads a chapter. we kind of
Yes,
got it right,
exactly.
absolutely. I like
That's
that.
right, it is,
Yeah.
that is exactly what it is. I don't know how to organize that, but.
Well, why don't we, let us kind of get the mechanics of it tomorrow clear.
Okay.
Yep.
And we'll send an email out and say, here are the options.
Yep.
And
Okay.
then we'll just kind of see, what are people have interest in? Maybe, could you just name your top 3 that you'd have interest in? And that way we can then kind of assign people to, who are interested in doing it. If you can't do it, there's obviously no pressure to do it. But there may be some things that may resonate with people. And that
Yeah,
includes student
absolutely.
reps. I mean, that's also
Yeah.
something that's been an option in the past as well, so.
If we created a Google Sheet with all of the sessions on
That's
it,
a
we
good
could all
idea.
go in and independently and edit that sheet to sign up for the ones we wanted.
That's super smart.
Correct, yep.
That's so easy.
Just a
And
thought.
all of the programs are on the back,
Yep.
so that makes it
Yep,
nice.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a couple on collective bargaining and stuff that would be handy.
Yes. All right, cool. I have one more thing on my portion of the report of the chair, and that is, this is Mr. Paul Stanley's last school board meeting. At the end of his second term, he's been with us for 6 years. I seem to recall that you got on this board because I asked you to run. Is that your recollection as well?
That's accurate.
I've regretted it
Thanks,
ever, no,
Joe.
I'm kidding. I very much appreciate that you've stayed with us for 2 terms, Paul. You're moving out of the district, so we're losing you. But it's been a pleasure serving with you. And this is the part where your other fellow board members get to embarrass you in public as well.
No need.
I just will speak for myself and just, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate everything and the behind-the-scenes support. Just the person to talk to be able to be a mentor, to be able to have some tough conversations with. I can't tell you how much that means to me. This is, obviously, as a first-year superintendent last year, and then dealing with the pandemic, it's certainly been an interesting ride the last 18 months, and, you've just been a rock, and I just truly appreciate, everything that you've done and how you bring a common sense approach to thinking about like what's the right thing in schools and what should we be focusing on. So thank you very much for that.
Very cool. That concludes my portion of the
Great.
agenda. Over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. We have had some conversations over the last probably 2 months about how do we streamline communication, have communication set up in a way of how do we communicate better. And I think one of the things that became very clear is that we communicate a lot, but at times it gets lost. And I know I just said that a minute ago, but that's really some of the feedback I think that we start to think about. And so I had a conversation with my team, and Ryan and I and Heidi and Scott sat down and had a conversation about it. And I give all the credit to Scott and the world that he was familiar with Apogee and said, you know what, I'm going to reach out to the company and let's learn a little bit more about it, And so they are an impressive marketing group, there's no question about that. So at first you wonder if it's just a marketing piece, and then to see kind of what they offer is really, it's really special. And I think it really, when they talked about what their strengths were and what we were looking for, there was a lot of common threads there. And so, you'll hear a little bit tonight. Is it Alan? Is that who it's going to be tonight? Alex will be doing a quick presentation for us, about 15 minutes, give you an opportunity to ask him any questions. But part of this work would be reformatting our websites, updating our websites, being able to find a way to be able to communicate succinctly, creating a customized app for the buildings, for the schools, to be able to have a running dialogue as to what's important. And it also would allow us to be able to, like with a press of a button, be able to communicate with, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, forms that we decide that we want to communicate with instantaneously with just one click of a button. And so it makes communication much easier. I think that gives us a great tool, and that's part of the work. I think the other part of the work is we need to get some systems in place to be able to, how do we promote communication within the buildings, and then how do we do that at the district level as well. And so there are kind of 2 steps to the process. So I think this may be a solution to the first step in kind of creating the what and the how, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about what the next step would be at the schools as we get more customized. So, Scott?
David, Alex is waiting according to text.
Okay,
Oh.
all right.
I also think she has the live stream up so she can see
Rob, can you turn those lights off, maybe? Is that okay to see?
Sure.
Everyone, you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Awesome. How's everyone doing tonight?
Great.
Good.
Awesome.
How's Arkansas?
It's good.
Oh, good.
I have a 7-month-old, and Matthias asked me to help him out and meet tonight, and I got out of putting him to bed. So wrestling a 7-month-old to go to bed is always a challenge. So I'm excited to be here with you guys tonight.
Well, thank you for joining us. We're excited to hear a little bit more about Apogee tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I know my colleague Matthias has been meeting. Give you guys a little bit of an overview. I was listening to the live stream, John, so I heard some of the things that you were saying, and it definitely sounds like at this point from your conversations with Matthias as a group that, really being able to communicate, but more importantly, compete for your family's attention, right? Share the good things that are going on at the district and have, an app that reflects that, as well as a website that reflects all the great things that are happening at the district is imperative, right? And more importantly, doing that in a way that's easy for the whole team to update. So I guess kind of my thought from here is I could dive in and show you guys the tools and what that would look like from the user's perspective, and then we could go from there. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sure.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Please.
All right, well, let me go ahead and share my phone screen with everyone. It's gonna come up on the big screen, or it should, hopefully. Can you guys see my phone screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So obviously there's, a ton of different companies out there that can build an app for the district, right? But the approach that we take is, building more of a mobile strategy, right? Because if everybody's on their smartphone, that's the best way for us to engage people, right? So, this is an example, probably the largest provider in K-12 education. And I want to start here to show you the user experience, right? We didn't build this app, but I want to show you the user experience because say I'm a parent, right? I come in here and I'm looking for something really simple like a lunch menu, right? I go to click on it. This is what I get. I'm guessing everybody's with me on why this would be a frustrating experience for that parent, right?
Yep.
Yes.
And, again, if this is how we're going to interact with people, probably not a lot of people are going to come back here if this is what they get every time, right? So that's where we take a really different approach. Same scenario of a lunch menu, right? Boom, one click, I've got what's on the menu for the day. Everybody see the difference in experience there?
Yes.
Sure.
Lunch menu is a really small thing, right? But honestly, you think about families in their day-to-day lives, right? That's what they come looking for, right? Is the lunch menu. Or when we think about communicating, especially with everything that's going on, something like events, right? What's going on? I'll jump over to RSU 57, but if I needed to come in here, I can add the finance committee meeting to my own personal calendar, right? I can send this to friend, family member, right? Maybe someone in the community to keep them informed of what's going on, even, invite them to come with me. And another key thing too is the staff directory. Again, for those parents in your community, say I want to come in and give Larry a call, right? One click, I'm calling him, or one click, I'm sending an email. Okay. I don't want to monologue too long at you guys tonight about the features of the app, but I guess is everybody starting to track with me there on the user experience, how easy that is?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then those bigger goals of continuing to promote the district, right? The positive stories that are happening every single day, right? Now that we have this good user experience, also what's built into the app is the live feed. So this gives you guys a really great opportunity to share, whether it's an important piece of information that needs to go out, right? Or if it is a story of success now, right? People can see those things on a day-to-day basis. you'll notice it feels similar to like social media, right? The good part is there's not a comments or a like section within here, and it's branded for the district, right? I hear some laughing at the comments in the like section. Yeah. I guess, does anybody have any questions kind of to start just with the mobile app, or are you guys seeing, you know, again, how cohesive that is in that user experience there?
Can you show us the notifications capability?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you talking about over here where it says notifications? Is that what you're
I don't know. I was
referencing?
on your website and I just found it really cool that you could just get notifications. If you set it up that way, it can pop up on your phone. So you don't necessarily have to know to go looking for something, but that you could just get the football team score, you know, on a Saturday night, and it would just come in. So I thought that was kind of cool and something we might want to learn about.
Yeah, for sure. And this is my demo phone, so I have a bunch of districts on here, but you'll notice, I think what you're talking about is the push notification. So much like we receive text messages and it pops up on our home screen, or we receive a breaking news alert, right? We can set that up, right, so that you guys can push out those notifications, and then it's gonna pop up right on the home screen of a phone. right, for
Would
those
families
families.
be able
So, yeah,
to?
you're not even having to click in to see the story. That can just pop up on the home screen as well. Yeah, that's a
So-
really good point.
Would families be able to choose, though, what notifications they wanted to get and which ones they didn't? Because I think one of the
Yeah.
things I saw was that instead of all the different apps for the sports teams and all of that stuff, it actually feasibly could be all under this one roof,
Exactly.
which I thought was
Yeah, for
really cool.
sure. And for your buildings, right, each building would have a section within the app. And so what you guys could do is over here on the right-hand side, those parents can come into their settings, right? And they can either choose a default school, right, maybe the school that their child goes to, which will automatically populate when they open up the app. And then they can choose who they receive notifications from, right? I have my notifications turned off, but they could choose, you know, from the district and from the high school, right? Save those preferences, and then like you're saying, get that pop-up notification from each respective, you know, school or campus, depending on, you know, where they have kids.
So would that be that we would send out the notifications, or would that automatically be generated for us?
Yeah, so and I can show you the back end, I think this will make more sense when I get there, but, yeah, we would set up like those, you know, the building groups, for example, within the app. So then, right, like that's what that corresponds with.
And you're able to select multiple schools if you have
Yeah,
kids
to
in
receive
multiple.
notifications
Yeah.
from, for sure, yeah, so you could, you know, if you have a middle and a high school student, right, sorry to jump around and go back and forth, guys, but yeah, you could receive notifications from the district, the middle school, the high school, right? And save those preferences for sure, yeah. Cool. And then from the back end, I know Matthias was saying ThrillShare seemed like the most exciting part for the admin team specifically, for how everything is updated, right? Because that's half the battle. I heard John kind of saying, you know, organizing how we share things, right? It needs to be really easy on your team. So I'm going to share my computer screen. Can you guys see my computer screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is ThrillShare, right? One of the schools wants to post a story, right? Coming in here and typing up, you know, check out our e-learning plan for this week, right? Just for an example. That can then be pushed out to Facebook, to Twitter, LF, which is that live feed we just looked at, right? That's gonna update the app and the website at the same time. Send out that push notification that we just talked about, right? Either to all of the groups or, you know, just a select group, right? And then also right from here, sending out a text message as well as a voice call, okay? And then with the click of this publish button, right, that's gonna go to all those channels at the same time.
So
It doesn't get any easier than that.
So this eventually, though, this could replace Blackboard Connect for us.
100%, yeah.
So that's how we do our
We've
you know,
had,
phone
you know,
issues
around
with snow
I think
days.
150 clients moved from Blackboard Connect over to us, so
Yeah.
definitely would replace that system for you. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's been somebody's whole job to do all of those individually. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Alex.
And the nice, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Could you show the board the ThrillShare mobile and
Yeah.
the usability for like emergencies or even just updating at sporting events or this and that?
Yeah, absolutely. So any of the administration team who's going to be posting, or even teachers, right, whoever might be posting, would also have access to ThrillShare Mobile on their smartphones. So like if it is that, you know, a football game is happening, right, and want to update those scores right as they're happening, or a snow day, for example, right, pulling out the smartphone, typing up the message, you know, snow day today, no school, and in turn, really easily sharing that to Facebook, Twitter, again, that live feed, which will update the app and website for you, send out that push notification, right? And then also, again, replacing that Blackboard Connect system with that text message, as well as a voice call, right? And can record audio right from here and do text to speech. If it's 4 a.m. and you're closing school, I don't know if John's gonna wanna speak that early in the morning, but can do either option there too. Cool. Any other questions there on ThrillShare?
Can I just ask, if you say you shared something to Facebook or to Twitter or whatever, and then you're getting responses on your post, is there any way for you to see responses to something that you shared, like who, so if people are then posting under your Facebook post, for example, is there like any way, how is that managed? You know what I'm saying, like right now we just post to like 4 different places.
Yeah, that's a good question. So as far as anything on Facebook or Twitter, if someone reposts that or someone comments on the post, we don't have a way within ThrillShare to respond to those. You would have to respectively go to Facebook or Twitter to respond to those comments. This is more for just the creation of those posts so that you don't have to go to 6 different channels to post one thing, right? But don't have anything for the management of the comments there. As well, that would have to take place in that third party.
And frankly, for us, we don't post on 6 different things. You know, so we don't really do much with Twitter at all, short of athletics. So I think this might open up some new avenues as well, as an unintended consequence, or an intended consequence, I should say.
Yeah. But we do post on the website. We do post on multiple Facebook groups. We do, I mean, there's still a lot of
Yeah, and the
posting.
website is it's not really user-friendly. I mean,
Right.
there's no other way to say it, and the way that it's set up, it just things keep kind of getting pushed down, and it's hard to prioritize things, and so I think this would make, you know, certainly a better user experience.
Yeah, for sure, and that is obviously the last piece we haven't talked about, but we do build a brand new website, right, and host a new website for the district as well. I pulled up one of the districts that we work with, but just a really clean and modern design, right, but also, like, it's easy to navigate. So if I want to go on a news article, right, it's right there for me, right, that live feed appears right on the home page. Like, nothing on the website is going to be more than 1 or 2 clicks away for someone who's interacting with the site on a day-to-day basis. And obviously giving you guys that clean and modern design as well to reflect kind of the district in your, you know, different colors and things like that. Obviously, this is the colors for this district, but we would build that out too. And then everything's updated from ThrillShare for the app and website as well. Cool. Well, does anybody have any questions for me? I know I went through that pretty quickly, but definitely open for any questions.
No, I think, I mean, it gives us an opportunity of something to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Great.
for sure.
It's a great start.
Thank you very much for your time, I really
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you, Alex.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Well, y'all have a good night, and I will talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So we have also spoken to our technology department to see, just being mindful of what strain that would be on them, and really what it comes down to is that this company, to set things up, really makes it very easy for us.
Yeah,
So the
sure.
transition, it may take some time to transition to it, I mean, it would be difficult to do it in the middle of the year, but it'd be something that we would start that process, be able to start to morph towards that. But as the board kind of talked about that goal of communication, I think this was part of that picture for people. Does that make sense to
Yeah.
people? People feel supported with that?
Yeah. So if you didn't have the app, then everything would still be on this new website with a better format?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I presume that anybody who has the ability to push information to the website from the app would also be able to push to the app from the website, I presume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. I think about that for a second, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I guess I'm thinking also in terms of, is there information that we would want to have on the website that we wouldn't necessarily want to have in the app? Not for any reason.
I think the level of detail probably, the
Exactly.
website's going to be much higher.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the app is going to be more the user-friendly,
Yes.
So right now, I mean, I think I know it seems silly, but the lunch menu is a great example of of just 5 or 6 clicks away, I've got fat hands, so obviously, you're pushing the wrong button, you're going back and refresh, and so to make that as
Yeah.
easy as possible.
I'm thinking about past searches for timing on buses, on bus routes and
Yep.
things like that. That has been historically not easy.
Yeah, it's been
on the
another whole
website.
document that you've had to
Yes,
kind of to go
yeah.
through, and then, so you're almost
Yeah.
like that takes you to another place, to go to another place, to go to another place, and
Yeah.
if we could find a way to synchronize that.
And then you're like pinch opening
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
things and trying to, yeah.
And the goal would be, I think of any of our schools or departments, I think Rich Buzzell probably does the best job of using social media.
Yep.
As a whole, I would say. So getting one format that the entire district would use. And so that, even though we might use, it used to be high school sports.net, I'm not sure what even it is now, they've changed the program that they use. But having that, be able to interface with what we're doing to be able to provide that user experience so that I can go one place and make the information that much easier to get, And the reality is, and it's a good thing, when I first became an athletic director years ago, I said to the principal, if I just had this bulletin board and I could put things on the bulletin board, that would solve all my problems, because I would put all the schedules up, everybody would know what they were doing, and he said to me, John, that's a great idea. The problem with having a bulletin board is you got to keep it up to date.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's the same thing. So if there's changes,
Yeah.
there's the onus that people are going to go there, then we have to keep that up to date. That's a priority. And so that's part of the conversation when I talk about getting the infrastructure in place to be able to, so now we have the how we're going to do it. And we know what we're going to do, but now we need to make sure that,
Yep.
that's done succinctly so that it becomes a resource, because it's like anything else. If someone goes to it 1 or 2 times and they can't get to do what they want to do, they say the heck with it, and then they're frustrated. And so there's some onus on us for that, so.
The good thing about it is it's a cutting edge, it's cutting edge technology in the real estate. It's pretty exciting, and fresh.
Yep.
So you think that potentially, you would adapt to it a little bit quicker. We just upgraded our, communication system at work, and saying it's fresh, and it's actually good, and you surprisingly stay on top of it, even multiple times during the day, rather than once a day or once
Right.
every other day or something like
Sure.
that, so.
And you would be shocked, I think, at a letter to go out, the process that goes through. Not even to the fact, as you know, writing is not my greatest gift, and so to have the proofreading process, and then it goes to this person to send that out to this, and then they need to give it to this person to send it out to this, and then they need to email these, so to be able to do that. And again, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, it's not as simple as you would think, hey, it's just a letter going out, there shouldn't be that big of a deal, but there's a lot of parts that go to that.
It seems like this would streamline it for you.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly
Yeah.
right, which is beneficial, so.
Cool.
Does that-
I love the idea of an app and having an icon on your phone as a parent or a student.
Sure.
That we all belong to something
Yes.
together. It's ours.
Yeah, and that's the branding
That's
piece.
so powerful, yeah.
And not having to have digital sports and remind
And all the different
all
apps,
the
yeah,
other things to
that
try
are-
to.
And that's what's happened, is that we don't have that, and so this coach uses Remind, and this
Right.
coach uses an email, and this coach has everybody's text, so they have a group chain text, and then this person, we have digital sports, but it's really,
Right.
we went to something else, so there was some confusion between the two programs at one point, and then, so enabled to say, look, this is where we're going, this is what we're gonna do. Now let's start to build the infrastructure around that to make it happen, to make a better user experience for our parents. And so that's, I think that was part of the concern that we talked about when we talked about communication, and then being able then to, to make sure that communication is timely and make sure it's correct is gonna be a critical part of that next step, so.
I honestly feel like it's gonna be a better experience for the administrator, too. I mean,
Absolutely.
if I'm a coach, this is gonna make my life easier.
Sure.
From what I
Absolutely.
can see. Digital sports is a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's just one example of all of those. They're just not.
And then also part of that is reevaluating, like, what's the most important information to put out there. Like, there's stuff that coaches can communicate, and there's stuff that needs to be on the website. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the stuff that really isn't as important, and then we lose the big picture, so to speak. So like, the time that practice starts tomorrow, if it's 2:45 or 2:55, is really irrelevant. The big idea is, there's practice tomorrow, and we have a meet on Saturday, the bus leaves at 9 o'clock. That's the big idea, right? And so to be able to communicate that in a way that makes sense to people, and make the resources out there for people, I think is important, so. Any other questions that the board has?
What is the cost of that?
It costs us about $8,000 to do the initial intake, where they kind of do our board, maybe, is it $9,000, Ryan? $8,000. Part of that would be CRF monies that we would use, because this is all part of being able to communicate better as part of the pandemic, and so we'll continue to work on that. We can pay for the update cost, because that would be done before the 31st of December. We would have to pay the yearly subscription cost to manage it out of our regular budget, but we do currently do that with Blackboard Connect, so the idea would be to really replace
it,
Blackboard
yeah.
Connect as we get going. There might be a slight increase in cost. I think it's basically $6,000 a year roughly. $12,000 a year. I think Blackboard Connect was 10-ish. I think we got a better deal last year, so a little bit less, but just to give you a sense of what it is. But I do think if we're really trying to do the communication piece, I think that the website's the place where we need to start. Then I think we need to build off of that, of how do we create an experience for people, so the app makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And then can we do it in a way it's not creating a whole nother bunch of tasks, so if we can work more efficiently, work smarter and more efficiently, that would be really critical. So that's where I'm at. I just wanted to make sure that the board was confident and comfortable with that. Okay, all right.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Perfect, and I want to give all the credit in the world to Scott. We had a conversation, and he,
Scott.
and just,
Is that the school that you worked
It was a
at?
little more organic than that. We had a conversation, right? But then after Juice Media showed up on your desk the next day with nothing to do with me. So
Yeah.
it was organic.
I like to give him credit for it. That's good.
Okay,
But-
the universe is telling you something.
Yeah, well, it was literally, it was bizarre. Like, I was having a
That's so great.
conversation, I was pulling my hair out, just saying, like, I gotta get my head around this, but it's overwhelming, because as I said to Joe, like, finding the who sometimes is the tricky part. And like, for me, I'm just being honest, for me, like, as in the pandemic, I don't know what the next 10 minutes are gonna look like, and I'm not exaggerating by that. And so this is a way to simplify things for people and to get people trained very quickly. I would like to see, going forward, my vision, and I haven't said this to anybody other than mentioning it to Scott and Ryan this afternoon, but to come to the point where we might have a person in each building who really is responsible for sharing stories once a week that are happening in the building. Like, I think it's a gap that we've had for a while, so let's celebrate the things that we're doing. At the same time, while we're doing that, we're creating habits for people to start to go to that, so that when there is a crisis, we already have developed a clientele, so they want to be able to know what's going on. And so,
Yep.
so we need to kind of build that user experience, I guess is the best way to say it, so.
I think, from a family perspective, I think people are gonna be just
Yeah.
thrilled.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thrilled.
And I just appreciate the feedback from the board and the conversations that we've had, because I think this is something that we've battled with for a while, and so to be able to start to develop a plan to be able to do that, I do appreciate your support as we
Yep.
go forward with it.
Yep.
So thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about pandemic and contact tracing, and I just, contact tracing is a little bit confusing for people, and I just think it's important just to say it again, because I think everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people feel like, yeah, I've got it, and then all of a sudden something happens, and they're like,
Wait.
I don't get it. Like, it gets a little bit bigger really quickly, and so contact tracing, I'm going to use the analogy, and forgive me, I had cancer a long time ago, and
when I had the treatment for that, the idea is that they would look at the tumor, and then they would also have to remove some of the healthy cells around the cancer to be able to provide us, to create some safety, to make sure they got everything that they needed to get. The contact tracing is kind of the healthy cells around the issue. And so if someone's sick, contact tracing is creating a bubble around someone who is ill, and then having those people kind of pull out of kind of our schools for a couple of weeks in order to ensure that we don't have an outbreak. Like, that's kind of the big idea. Because we have to contact trace doesn't mean that we weren't doing what we were supposed to do. And just because you're in a classroom and you're 6 feet apart and we have the ventilation system turned up and all these things that we do, that doesn't give us a get out of jail free card for contact tracing. And so I think sometimes, like, it gets a little bit confusing. The other thing about contact tracing is that I probably have had the question 25 to 30 times that a person I know has COVID and I have their cousin on my bus and they had lunch together on Friday, can they go on my bus? So it's not a close contact of a close contact that is being pulled away. So I think sometimes people get a little bit confused around a close contact is someone who is directly in contact with someone for that greater than 15 minutes, in a classroom space, and so then we're taking that loop and creating that bubble around to ensure for the betterment of our entire community that we're going to be safe. At the same time, we're going to continue to provide an education for those students. And so sometimes we can do that really quickly, in some cases, and sometimes it takes a little bit more time, but our staff has been phenomenal. I also want to point out that going out, if our single classroom having to go out remote for a period of time is very different than the entire district going remote for the entire time. So there's some technological things that are very, very different. And so it would be a lot easier, and it would still be challenging, but it'd be a lot easier if a student at the high school who knows how to use technology, has been using the computer all along, has to learn remotely for 2 weeks as opposed to a second grader. That's a very, very different experience. And so we're trying to build that as we go. But there is, if we ever had to go out for extended period of time as a district, there would be some time that we would require to make sure kids had the technology that they needed, teachers had the support that we needed, and be able to go forward to be able to provide that education. So I just think there's a little bit of confusion around the contact tracing, what that really means. We did have 2 incidents that I think it's really important to share, and I know that you got my frustration in one of my emails that I shared with the Maine Department of Education, and they were fantastic. But we did have a situation where a person did test positive, and we weren't notified for 4 days. And so they were notified either Friday night or Saturday, depending on who you talk to. But Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday came by. We didn't hear anything. They developed this portal that they put out to say kind of like a portal, a dashboard around a COVID dashboard. And it said, hey, look, the Great Works School had a positive case. Brian called me at 6 o'clock at night. I think it got posted at 5:30, and he said, John, did we have a positive case at Great Works School? I said, not that I'm aware of. I said, they probably made a mistake. We did have a positive case at the middle school. So I called Judy anyway to say, Judy, are you aware of anything? Just to make sure I'm not losing my mind, And Judy said, no, I haven't heard anything. And so she said, let me send off a letter to the CDC, which we did. Come to find out the next morning that there was a case that the person did not report to us. Should never have happened.
Yep.
It should never have happened. And someone made a mistake, and it is what it is. But as you know, the Department of Education heard our concerns as a district. We were on the last Thursday's news briefing. I'm not sure if anybody caught it, but when Dr. Shaw did his briefing, they did talk about it a little bit. So I think our voice was heard, but it just created, it's in theory how things are managed, and then the practical side of it, there's things that are out of our control, and we're doing the best thing that we can. This week, as you know, there was a letter that went out that there was a case at the Great Works School. And a little bit of a curveball, because the mass majority of people that we typically would deem as close contacts were all outside, greater than 6 feet apart, but they were in a class. So the question became, it's very clear if you're in a classroom for greater than 15 minutes, that it's a close contact. How do you deal with being outside? Because that's a whole nother layer to this. And so the CDC was they took about 36 hours to get back to us to kind of give us some guidance. And so here we were in the midst of knowing that we have a positive test. We've got a number of students of how do we handle that. Like the last thing that I wanted to do as superintendent, and if it's anybody's fault, it's mine, and I'll take accountability for it,
was I don't want to put 50 kids on the bus who have been in close contact with someone who, unfortunately was ill, and so we made the decision, and families have been unbelievable. But just to say, hey, look, they haven't told us what we're going to do yet. They haven't deemed whether people are close contacts or not, but just in light of that, we're asking people to stay home for the day until we understand what's happening. They stayed home. People, again, were wonderful. Even as late as yesterday afternoon, it looked like it was going to have to be a second day that people were home. Jerry Brunel got a phone call, I believe, at 6:30 last night. He and Lori Pond, or Lois Galza, went into school, called every family personally and said, you're welcome to come back to school tomorrow. But it's not always as clean as it's 2 weeks, here's the letter, this is what it looks like. So I just want to share with you that it's and I don't ever want people to think that we're trying to hide anything. Like that's not how I operate, that's not how we operate. I think there needs to be a level of trust, but I just want people to understand that it's not always as clean as people would like to think, or as you read a document. The other part about communication, I just think it's important to let people know that if there were a positive case, I think the priority is letting the staff member who's in that classroom know and the family of the children know. Like those are our top two priorities. Next is we want to let the building staff know. Then I want to let the community know. And so I just think it's important that we're not, people aren't learning about this through Facebook. If my child's in that classroom, I don't want people to learn it through Facebook or learn it through Twitter or what have you. So there's a real clear communication protocol that I want to go through. And for me, I want to make sure that we've had an opportunity for close contacts to be called, because I know that's a level of stress for people. And then once I send my letter out, I ask the principal to kind of send a follow-up letter, that evening saying, hey, look, this is where we're at. This is why we're greater than 6 feet apart. Any close contacts have been contacted at this point, because there's this anxiety that we all would have as parents, is that, oh my gosh, there's a positive case. Is it my child? I haven't heard anything. Did my phone ring? Like it becomes very real for all of us. And so just trying to create that understanding is to the time. It's not only to communicate, but it's the timing of the communication in order to be able to get that out in a way that makes sense, but it's also sensitive to the people that are involved. So does that make sense? Any questions?
I have a question. For now that sports are happening, with the contact tracing, go to the sports too? Like, would you remove the sports teams members?
Yeah, that becomes a cohort. Yeah, absolutely. But the tricky part is that so some sports may be very different than others, and so golf might be where they were never they were always greater than 6 feet apart, always outside. That might be very different than if someone were playing a soccer game, and they that 6 feet level is definitely a little bit different. So. And then being outdoors adds a whole nother level. And so I think the outdoor piece for the CDC is becoming a little bit more, there's some nuances there that I think they're all working through. But that definitely, that is another level that we'd have to be aware of. Yep. And again, I cannot give, Tani, the nurse at the high school, Judy Doran, the nurse at the middle school, Lori Scalzo at the Great Works School, Laura Duttweiler at Central School, and Casey at the elementary school, enough credit. I mean, of just managing this on a regular basis. This is hard. The last thing I would say about this is also this, is I think it's important for people to understand that people didn't ask for this to happen. They get sick. It's, and so I think sometimes there's this feeling like, oh my gosh, someone has COVID, and there's some feelings around that, but I mean, people aren't asking for this to happen, and so there are human beings attached to this, and just I think it's always important to remember that, that we want to be supportive of all our members of the community, and sometimes those things happen, and it's unfortunate, but I just think we need to be sensitive to the fact that we are all human beings. It could happen to any of us, even with our best intentions and all the precautions that we take. So, any questions? Okay. Just a quick CRF update. So we did receive CRF 2. I know we'll talk about that a little bit more with the report of the committees, but just want to give people a sense of where we're spending some of that money. We are investing the majority of that into technology, but how do we leverage technology, kind of being in this new hybrid and remote environment, how do we make sure teachers have the tools in their pockets that they need? One of the things that's been a real stressor is the Chromebooks are a little bit limited for what they can do for staff, and so trying to give the staff what they need to be able to meet the need. So there's basically, the other part is that MSLN, Ryan? MSLN is our service provider, and so one of the things that I talked about the last time we met was the speed, the bandwidth is very, very limited at some of our schools, so that's created some obstacles. We did get some good news that we are slated to have that increased. Not sure when it's going to happen, but that certainly will help and take some pressure off of people. I think the other thing that that we forget about is that every kid that has an iPhone in their pocket, that's refreshing every few minutes, like that's taking up bandwidth. Any computer that's being used, and so there's a lot of pulls on those systems that you don't necessarily, doesn't involve live streaming. And so any more bandwidth that we can get is going to be really important. We are going to invest in some of the switches to be able to make sure we have the coverage in the buildings that we need. And then obviously the technology that's in the hands of the parents, of the teachers, and then also investing in some more iPads for elementary school kids to be able to have that remote experience, so they have the iPads that they would need. We cannot get Chromebooks, and so one of the things that we were facing is that if we even wanted to buy some more student devices for the high school, middle school, work school students, we could not get them. And the trick is that we couldn't get them by December 31st, so if we do that, then we lose that money. And so that's someplace we decided we couldn't invest in. And we're also looking at the upgrade at the heating systems at the elementary schools. And so HVAC questions are becoming more and more prevalent right now. And so part of our plan was recommend people have their windows open. And so as it gets colder, it gets a little bit trickier. And so the last thing I want to do all winter long is manage the heat in all the buildings, but that's going to be an issue that we have to think about. And so we've said to our custodians that we're setting the heat at 70 degrees, which is high. I understand that that's high. We're going to put the unoccupied heat temperature to 66 degrees. And what happens is that we're bringing in so much outside air that the rooms are cooling off. And so remember, like if our dampers are 30% open, what's happening is that we're not going to get to 70 degrees. That's going to probably, my goal is to keep the rooms at 64 to 68 degrees. And so we're trying to be able to keep those room temperatures where they need to be. The tricky part is that sometimes, particularly here at the high school, it's a little bit temperamental in that, let's say there's 10 classrooms in a pod. And so if I'm a teacher and there's 10 teachers and each one of those classrooms has a vote, and if 6 of those teachers have their windows open and the heat's still running constantly because they're trying to reach that 70-degree temperature, which it can't reach, those other 4 classrooms that are in their temperature in the classroom might be 78 degrees. But we can't control that because it's a voting system. And so part of this is working with your people around you. So if the heat's on, it's on for all 10 of those rooms. If the heat's off, because the voting system, then the heat's off for all 10 of those rooms. And so there's some subtleties there that we need to be aware of. So, so that's one of the questions that has come up. So I met with the head custodians about that 2 days ago, and we're trying to do that now before it gets too cold outside. And so if we can afford to bring that number down from 70 to 68, which is typically where we're at, that's where I'd like to be. But I'm more concerned about creating an environment that's comfortable for kids to learn in. That being said, it may be advisable to wear a sweatshirt to school. The days of, Connor used to show up with a t-shirt and shorts on in February and think that was okay, and that probably, this might not be the year for that because there's going to be a lot more outside air coming through.
And you have sent out stuff
Yeah.
saying, dress.
Yeah, and that's part, and that's part of it, but, frankly, Monday the boiler went down here, and then I'm hearing that classrooms are 58 degrees, and I'm like, well, I can't. There's nothing I can say to that. That's not okay. So we have to figure that out. So part of the things we're also trying to get is an alarm system on our boilers, that in the event that the boilers do go out, that we get an alarm exactly when it happens, as opposed to showing up on Monday morning and then all of a sudden realizing that it's cold, because it's not like your house. It takes more than 15 minutes for the building to heat up. And so that's one of the issues. The last thing I would say is with the HVAC system, some questions have been raised about how do you keep it safe for an HVAC system? And so there's really 4 big ideas. Is that we want to change our filters more often. And so typically we change our filters twice a year. We're changing that, upgrading that to 3 times a year now. We've gone with the highest quality filter that we can have, which is the other thing that you can do. The other part is running the system more often. And so we're running air through it. Typically we used to run the system from basically 6 a.m. to 4, and so now we're running it from basically 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. Anytime the building's occupied, we're exchanging the air over and over again. So
Those are the things that we're really trying to do to make sure that we're intact and keeping that airflow going up,
Yeah.
and keeping the air turnover going, so. Okay, and then just the last thing, when I met with Joe at 9:30 in the morning last Friday, and then I got an emergency text that said, the Department of Education wants to meet with all the York County superintendents at 10 o'clock. I had no idea what it was going to be about. I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to be good. And so we sat down and they said, well, we got great news. You guys are going to be in green. And everyone was like, great, but wait a second. Like, we didn't think we were going to get reevaluated this last week. And so it was a great surprise, but it was certainly a surprise. So I just want to be clear that the CDC has the ability to change that coding when they feel it's necessary. And they were looking at a couple of the other counties. And then said, you know what, let's look at York County at the same time, and they did that look and decided that we were green. So we have started our athletic programs, which I think is wonderful, and I'm sure that may come up tonight with the students. But so that, we do have kids out and about, which is a very different campus than it was a week ago. So I think it's a great thing, and just wanted to share that with the board. And I think there are very few times when there's moments to celebrate in the midst of a pandemic, but when we went from yellow to green, that's a huge celebration. And for me, the biggest celebration is to drive into this building on Monday afternoon and see kids with big smiles on their faces coming out, good, being involved with something, and that just, that warms your heart, and that's what we're in this business for, and I think that's been some of the things that it's been missing, and so I'm great to see it. So that concludes my report. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay. So Interact Club held their first community service event, and it was with the Blue Ocean Society to help clean Hampton Beach on October 9th. And something cool about this was the Blue Ocean Society had their own app to track every single piece of trash that we picked up. And the data that we collected is being used in environmental studies, such as tracking the pollution of plastic straws. And we picked up over 2,100 pieces of trash, which is really awesome.
Wow.
Student government is currently recruiting more students to be on the exec board, and we'll have our first meeting within the next few weeks. And then AP teachers are starting to use AP Classroom more, and if you don't know what that is, it's a website provided by College Board that has official quizzes and practice problems to help prepare the students for the AP exam, which is, I feel like it's more important this year since we have a lot less class time, so it's nice that we're getting actual official problems rather than other resources. That's all I had, so Trevor.
So as you guys might have heard, sports teams start practicing on Monday. One thing I really liked about this is they're doing a subtle increase to games. Like the first 3 days were only conditioning, and coaches were providing information on the new rules. Like for instance, in soccer, the ball is being sanitized every 20 minutes, so it allows people to throw the ball in and stuff like that. And so in these first 3 conditioning days, coaches and players just kind of having a hard time because in those rules, we can't high five, we can't cheer or yell within people of 9 feet. I think that's right. And they kind of show how it's kind of different. So our first game's on Wednesday against Trape, and for senior night, there is not a senior night to our first home game, and only seniors, parents can go to those games. So it's kind of odd year with those new rules and stuff like that. And on the idea of boys soccer, I think Sydney said that cross country is having scrimmage meets, and the only real meet is this state meet. While in soccer, there's 6 games against people in York County like Wells, Kittery, BA, and Kennebunk. And then that's mostly everything I have.
Just 2 things about the green status is that, so we are opening up outdoor activities, and so we're still restricted on what we can do indoors, and so just being mindful that we have to be less than 100, but for instance, if we wanted to have the Interact Club meet here, we still can't do that at this point in time, and so we're holding off on those things. Hopefully that will change over the next little bit, so we're focusing right now on the outdoor activities, and so one of the things also I wanted to share with you is that one of the things I think we're doing a little bit differently is that we have social distancing monitors that we have hired, and basically that's staff members to go down. We have 3 at the high school right now. We'll have some at the middle school next week when we start some intramural activities there. But basically it's 3 people to go down there and keep an eye to make sure kids and staff are kind of following the social distancing rules. And so what would happen, I'm sure, is that you have a coach who's really involved and excited and working with the kids, and all of a sudden, kids are starting to work together, and just really, someone there just to remind people to stay back. And it's not about necessarily competition, but it might be about when the coach says, hey, everybody bring it in, and everybody kind of piles on top of each other, they kind of come in, because that's what people have always done, of just remembering to kind of keep what that social distancing look like. So just to have another layer of protection, and just another set of adult eyes down there to help the trainer out. So, and then, once we get through the next couple of weeks, then we'll start to get the MPA guidelines that should be coming out later this week around what the winter is going to look like. And that will kind of talk a little bit more about after-school activities.
Yep.
Those types of things that would be inside the building, so. And that completes my report.
Great, thank you very much, John. In correspondence, we did get a letter from the Quamfigan Education Association, addressed to me, actually, notifying us that the QEA intends to negotiate on behalf of the teachers, the nurses, and the educational technicians this year. It's just a notification of that intent, and I think this is pretty standard, right?
Standard, yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
okay,
Yep.
cool, so we got that. And that's it for correspondence. Report of the committees, the Facilities and Finance Committee did meet just prior to this meeting. Paul, did you want to do the numbers for us?
Sure.
Since it's your last chance to?
My last chance, my one and only meeting this time around on the Facilities Committee. So the numbers were a little bit more complicated than normal because of the CRF spending. So we'll focus on just kind of updating that a little bit for those of you who were not there. Our general fund budget and expenditures look pretty good like they normally do at this point. However, with the CRF money, we're spending a lot of money that we are not getting yet. So our cash balance is down significantly lower by a little over $1 million lower than we would expect it to be at this point in time. So what we're doing to address that is securing a revenue anticipation note from Androscoggin Bank at a very low interest rate. And that's going to loan us $2 million that can go into the bank to help be able to spend that money before the end of the year and then go through the process of getting that money back at the beginning of next year. So net, it's going to end up costing us about $10,000 in interest, but it's going to allow us to have access to that $2 million in CRF money, which we otherwise would not be able to access without potentially going broke, which we don't want to do.
If I can jump in for a second, there's actually a motion for, under new business, for the board to approve the issuance of that note. So we'll deal with that in
Correct.
detail later.
Yes, so.
Thank you.
Assuming that's approved, I guess I should say. Everything else looks pretty much normal. We were profitable in school nutrition, and we expect to not be so profitable once we look at September because meals are down by about 50%. And we haven't got much money from federal grants yet because there's one person at the state doing everything. That's about it for the money.
Thank you for that. Now, are you going to do the other stuff?
Sure,
Thank
a
you.
couple of transportation items. We're going to use CRF funds to leverage the purchase of 2 buses and 1 van, which will help with the 5-year bus rotation forecast. And next item is we received 2 of the 4 buses. However, we also clarified with the dealer that if they're not available by 12:30, we're not interested.
Yep.
A little late.
Simple as that.
That is what it is.
Keep driving.
One other point, and Ryan, correct me if I do this wrong, but because of the CRF funding, everybody's behind in their audits, and we're expecting to have our audit sometime in late November. Did I do that right?
They're coming to do field work in late November. I would expect the final reports may not come in until mid-January.
Okay.
It just takes them some time. When they actually do their field work, then they have to go in and wrap up and do all the checklists and things.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. I think that's it for facilities. Ed Policy next meets on October 28th, and we have a slew of second reads tonight to go through from policies that we did first read at our last meeting. So that brings us to the new business section, and we can start entertaining motion on these second reads. May I have one, please, for the social media use?
I motion to approve the second reading and discussion of policy use of social media by school employees, GCSB.
I'll second.
Sue, thank you.
Can I comment, Joe?
Yes, please do.
Okay, and so we have just been really fortunate to have a group of educators with the QEA that's really just been great partners with us. And so they reached out and had a couple of questions about this policy. And so We had a great conversation about it. I think they posed some hypotheticals of, you know, what is the intent of this? And so it's not, the intent isn't to, if someone were out not wearing a mask, to be able to you know, discipline them because they were out at dinner at a restaurant not wearing a mask. That's not the intent. It's not the intent to say that you can't go to a, you know, a vote for whomever rally to go to. But there is some things where there might be some rallies that may not be appropriate and may be able to infringe on the ability of students to access their education. And those are the types of things of why, you know, of kind of the other side of that, of why we would do that. But it was great conversation to kind of say, let's get our head around, like what's the intent of this? One of the fascinating things, which I never thought of when we went over this, and so I have made an addition to the policy, is what happens if you have a situation where you have a building administrator who might be really anti-social media? Just say, look, nothing but bad things happen on it. I don't want to use Apogee. It could only be bad. So if you don't say anything, I can't get in trouble. That kind of mindset. And the teacher saying, hey, look, if I'm teaching AP US history, and this would be really important for us to be able to kind of real time go back and forth and discuss these topics, this would be really important. And the principal said, no, the way the policy read is that would be kind of the end of the conversation. And I think that the QEA just asked very fairly to say, you know, in the event that, you know, there is a note, is there an appeal process that we could take it to another level to ask whether or not social media would be appropriate for a class? And I thought that that was a very fair ask. And so the addition of the policies in yellow, which basically says any decision on the use of social media by a staff member resulting from this policy can be appealed to the superintendent. And so just a simple additional sentence. I didn't think that that was an unreasonable ask. I think they understand the purpose of the policy. But I do think it was a great conversation just to kind of calibrate ourselves, you know, of just like what's the intent, particularly in the environment that we're in right now. So.
Right. Excellent.
That doesn't leave, like, it's not a forgiveness permission thing. It's not like they did it and then they can appeal it because it was shut down. I'm trying to
The
clarify.
process should be that before they use it, they should say, hey, look, I want to use this, you know, is it okay to use this? And the
That's
person would
what I
say-
want to determine. It's
Yes.
not like you can't come afterwards and go.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, there's a process that we want people to follow. Like,
Okay.
That's the important part.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? I make that 6-0. Thank you. May I have a motion on the program for English language learners?
I move that we approve the second reading and discussion of policy programming for English learning learners, IHBEA.
Second.
There's no change to this from last time we looked at this, yeah,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? 6-0, thank you. May I have a motion for the education of homeless students policy?
I move we approve the second reading and discussion of policy, education of homeless students, JFABD.
A second.
Second, Ms. Sue, thank you. Same thing, no change from the last time we read this. Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Also 6-0, good, thank you. How about the education of homeless students, the -R procedure?
I move we approve the second reading and discussion of policy, education of homeless students procedure, JFABD-R.
Second.
Ms. Jen, thank you. And take a little bit more looking through to make sure, but again, I don't think there have been any
No,
changes.
There
to
hasn't
the
been any
rest of
changes
them.
to any of the policies,
Okay.
other than the first one.
First
Yep,
one,
okay. Good.
I should have
Questions?
said that. I wasn't sure the first one you were asking me, you're telling me, so I'll say it all just to save you from saying it.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor? 6-0, thank you very much. Okay, this is the E1.
I move that we approve the second reading and discussion of policy, education of homeless students, notice JFABD-EI, or E1, EI?
I think that's E1.
E1,
Yeah.
E1,
Yeah.
exhibit 1.
I'll second.
Going for reader
Okay,
classes.
again, no changes. Questions, comments? All those in favor? That would be 6-0, I'm sorry, Elaine.
Who seconded?
Sue Bourbon,
Oh, so, okay, thank you, sorry.
and that is also 6-0. And now we get to Exhibit 2.
I move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy sample housing information form JFABDE2.
Second.
Paul Stanley, thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? 6-0, thank you. And that brings us to Exhibit 3.
And I'll move to approve the second reading and discussion of the written policy notification decision JFABD-E3.
Second.
That was Jen for a second, thank you. Again, no changes, any questions or comments? All in favor? 6-0, thank you.
Now here, Paul's your last chance to give us a Dan mantra.
There's a pressure, there's a lot of balance.
I wasn't prepared. Let's see. All right, so I move we approve the first reading and discussion of the policy model local dispute resolution process. Juliet Foxtrot Alpha Bravo Delta dash E4.
Nice job. We'll get to
Who seconded?
I'll second.
Jen, all right.
My duck fell.
The motion you just made was for a first reading, but the policy, or the E4 in here says that it's a second reading. The motion should have said second read?
It should have
That's
said
correct.
second.
Okay, we'll make that correction.
And I rescind that motion.
Okay, that is a second read. Any questions about that? Comments? Okay, all in favor? Okay, 6-0, thank you. All right, that's all of the policies that we have to deal with tonight. We have a motion regarding an annual fundraiser. If someone would make that motion, please.
I'll move that we approve an annual fundraiser for the Music Booster to partner with the Giving Bean to conduct a fundraiser selling coffee, tea, and cookies to support band and chorus activities, including but not limited to the purchasing of replacements for needed equipment and supplies.
A second.
That's Sue, thank you. All right. This is a case where, because they want to do this on an annual basis rather than one-off, it has
Yes,
to be
they've done it
approved.
1 year, so now it's coming for the second.
It has to
reading,
be
so now
approved
we
by the
need to-
board.
Make it an
I have just talked a little bit with the principals also. I'm just being really mindful as we fundraise in this economic environment. I just think we need to be very mindful of what we're asking our community to do. Obviously, there's been some severe effects for some of our families with the pandemic, so I just think it's important to be mindful whenever we do something like this. So.
Okay, anybody have any questions about this? It's already been done once, and they want to do it annually. Okay, all in favor? That is also a 6-0, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the tax and revenue anticipation note. If I can have a motion for that, please.
I'll move we approve the authorization of, yes, that. I will move we approve and authorize the issuance of a tax and revenue anticipation note.
I'll second.
Jen, thank you. Okay, we did discuss this rather at length at the Facilities and Finance Committee, but it's worth mentioning that this is going to cushion us because we're spending down our cash balance and expecting reimbursements that are very slow to come from the state on the CRF money. This is basically going to protect us. It's an insurance policy, basically, to ensure that we don't run out of cash before we get our reimbursements on the CRF money.
Correct.
Yeah. And as Paul mentioned, there's a $10,000 or $12,000 interest charge that we will wind up incurring as a result of having the note, but
See, it's funny, you said it the same way I said it, then Ryan corrected me, because he said, it's really not an insurance policy. 'cause
No.
We know we're going to use it. So it's like, that was, I
It's
just
more
wanted
like
to
a
make that
bridge
clear.
loan.
So it's an insurance policy, we know we're going to cash in. So this is the way that he wanted me to say it before.
It ensures we don't go broke.
It ensures we don't go broke, that's what the insurance policy is, that's correct.
fair enough.
Fair, Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions about that, or comments, or concerns? In that case, all in favor? And that is 6-0. Thank you. I see we have a teacher nomination as well.
Yeah, and kind of going through this, we did have a resignation of Heather Carrier. She is moving out of the area, unfortunately, due to some work things with her family, and so that created a vacancy. So, as I said to you 2 weeks ago, it is tricky to find certified teachers and also certified teachers who are in this area. So Kristen is actually
Burke Academy graduate. She went to school through her years at Marshall Middle School. She attended Brown University, is working kind of as an Ed Tech 1 or Ed Tech 3 for us right now. Has been able to get an emergency certification to be able to go into the classroom and be a second grade teacher. So we're very lucky that Kristen's able to do that. So again, the great news is that I met with Kristen today. I've known her forever. Her mother is actually the administrative assistant at the school. That's great news. The bad news is that opens up another ed tech position that we have to fill. So it just we're shuffling to be able to keep the ball in the air. And so I think we have some candidates for that, but there's this balancing act that we're going to go through. And the other information that I got today is that there are some schools in the area that may, not in Maine, but New Hampshire, who may have some openings that are kind of full-time all year, or full-time openings that aren't just 1 year only. So that may adversely affect some of our teaching staff who are looking for those full-time jobs in the short term. So we may have to be dealing with that shortly. So I had a conversation this morning. I had a letter, just preparing for that to happen. So.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's have a motion then to approve this.
I move we take action to nominate Kristen Jones, first-year probationary elementary teacher at the Central School, BA 01, $43,843, prorated to the start date, school year 2020 to 21.
Second that.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, any questions or comments from the board? In that case, all in favor? That is also 6-0. Thank you. Before we adjourn, Rob, anything that you wanted the board to know?
Just, as usual, thanks for all the efforts that go on here. Thanks to the students for their continued commitment to our new environment, and the teachers that just continue tireless work. So just really quickly, we're at the point of the implementation. We've had our 1 through 4 rotation, 5 through 8. We're at a point, the quarter break, so we're going to start collecting some data and info on how things are working and what to shift and change and adjust. So that will be in the forms of surveys and questions in our continued meetings. So we're at that point where the implementation needs to be looked at, so we can be in a perpetual state of adjusting. So thank you, and
Of course.
look forward to that dipstick now, because we think we're at a point where we'll be smart to gather some data now.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, anything you wanted to let us know?
Every day is busy and every day is different right now.
Yep.
Which sort of pulls through my skill set anyway. Enjoying working with the principals and the staff. And again, everybody's doing an amazing job. These are not easy times, and these are not easy problems that we're trying to solve, but they continue to make progress and surprise me and impress me with their level of professionalism.
Great, thank you for that. Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Gratian.
Yes, thank you.
Much appreciated. Paul, would you care to do the honors?
Sure. I will make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Oh, hang on. Please, may I see all in favor? I have 5.
She's want Paul to go.
Opposed? I have 1. Please note that the vote was 5-1, and Mr. Paul Stanley was in the nay. Nicely
Got to do it
done.
once, right?
We are adjourned.